Let's talk Heartbreak 101. Strong relationships take work, and there are some real barriers that can get in the way if we're not careful. One of our biggest is poor communication. When we don't listen or when we avoid tough conversations altogether, misunderstandings pile up fast. Lack of trust is another barrier because once trust is broken with a partner, it's hard to feel safe with each other. Jealousy and insecurity, those can make small issues feel huge, and infidelity, well, that can completely shatter a bond instantly. Sometimes the problem is with neglect or complacency, and that's where one or both people just stop putting in the effort. The relationship feels stuck. On top of that, external pressures like stress from school, family, money, work, all of those things make it harder for us to stay close and connected with our romantic partners. And finally, unrealistic expectation. Let's be real. This is where we expect a partner to be perfect and for them to solve every problem. And that almost always leads to disappointment. The good news is, though, that when we recognize that these barriers exist, we can deal with them before they grow too big and give our relationships a better chance to succeed. Another idea that helps explain relationships is called equity theory. The basic idea here is that people want fairness. In a healthy relationship, both partners feel like what they give and what they get are balanced. Now, that doesn't mean that everything has to be exactly 50-50. But if one person is always putting in all the time, the energy, or the support, while the other partner does very little, well, resentment starts to grow. On the flip side, if someone feels like they're getting way more than what they deserve in a relationship, they might even start to feel guilty about that and pull away. Equity theory reminds us that relationships are strongest when both people feel valued, appreciated, and like their efforts matter. When things feel fair, it builds trust, and trust builds commitment. When they don't, it can become a major source of conflict. Relationships are built on trust, and that means that you believe what the other person says, and you feel safe with them. When someone lies or they hide the truth, that trust gets broken. And once it's broken, it's really hard to get back. Even small lies can make the other person start wondering, what else aren't you telling me? And pretty soon, you don't feel like you can believe them at all. You see, without trust, every fight feels worse, and you stop feeling close to each other. That's why lying and deception can cause relationships to fall apart. And it takes away the honesty and the safety net that keeps people connected together. Now, concealment is the most common form of deception in relationships. In fact, it occurs more often than all other forms of deception combined. And concealment is a type of dishonesty where you don't exactly lie, but you're also not telling the whole truth. For example, let's say that you tell your partner you went out to dinner with friends. That could be a true statement, but you leave out the part that your ex was there too. That missing detail changes how your partner would understand the situation. Now, even though you didn't say anything false, hiding that kind of information can make your partner feel misled once they find out. And we all know they always find out. Concealment, you see, can be just as damaging as lying directly because it breaks down that trust and makes the other person wonder, well, what else are you leaving out? What's going on? And once trust starts to slip, it's very hard to get back. You see, both lying and concealment damage the foundation of honesty that every relationship depends on. Over time, they create doubt, stress, and distance, often leading to the end of the relationship. And that leads to conflict. Conflict is just a fancy word for a fight or a disagreement. It happens when two people want different things or they feel like something isn't fair in a relationship. Conflict isn't always bad. You see, it's actually normal in every relationship. Some other key features of conflict is that it always unfolds over time. You see, conflict is rarely about just one event. It builds and it escalates through repeated patterns. An example would be you have a small argument about chores around the house, but that becomes bigger fights about fairness in the relationship, and that pattern repeats itself over and over. Conflict is also determined by the communication choices we make. You see, how a partner responds shapes the direction of the conflict. So I can choose to listen, I can choose to compromise, or I can choose to escalate, and all of that will set the tone for the outcome. If I roll my eyes, that's going to elicit a certain response from you. It's going to upset you. Versus if I provide eye contact and I calmly explain my frustration, but I show that I'm listening and I show that I care, well, that's going to lead to a different outcome. Conflict is also transactional, meaning that it's two-way. Everything one person says or does influences how the other person responds. If I yell, guess what? You're probably going to yell. If I lower my voice and I'm calm and collected, there's a greater likelihood that you will also lower your voice and remain calm and collected. Why does conflict feel so intense? Well, arguing with a stranger usually doesn't matter that much to us because we have nothing invested with them. But when we fight with someone we care about, that feels worse. Why? Because you've shared your feelings, your secrets, and you've shared time with them. You know each other very well. And that's good when things are going right. But during a fight, it also means that you know how to hurt each other. You know the buttons to push. And that's why conflict with people you love feels heavier and is more draining. The longer you've been in a relationship, the more likely it is that you've shared deeper attributes about yourself. And that information, those dreams, those fears, those insecurities, maybe you share how you've been hurt in prior relationships. People can use that against you during conflict. And it's a really bad and nasty element of human nature. In fights, we often find ourselves kitchen sinking. And that's such an odd phrase to say, like, oh, I've been kitchen sinked this week in our fight. But kitchen sinking means that instead of staying on the issue at hand, whatever the current fight or argument or disagreement is about, we tend to bring up everything from the past. So you might be fighting about how I didn't take the trash out and you asked me to. And I say, remember last month when I asked you to take the dishes out of the dishwasher and put them up and you didn't? Well, why is that relevant to the current conversation, right? It's technically not relevant because it's not the basis of the current disagreement, but yet I bring it up. Why? Well, because we don't like to feel as human beings that we're losing. And we don't like to lose in life, and we don't like to lose in conflict. And so we kitchen sink. We bring irrelevant information from the past into the current arguments and disagreements. And that only adds to the complexity, the layers of conflict, and it can damage and erode our relationships. Never strive to shift the focus from solving the current problem to winning the fight. Ultimately, you will lose that battle every single time. So instead of kitchen sinking, let's practice tailored communication. So we need to be informative in our communication. So provide helpful context and not vague accusations. So you can say what happened and why it mattered. A bad example would be, you don't care about me. A better example would be, when you didn't text me back after I shared good news, I felt unimportant. Why it matters, the more specific you are, the easier it is to address the issue. Another key word here is I. So you see, I felt unimportant. That is what we call I language. You taking ownership of how you feel in that moment and being open, honest, and vulnerable and sharing that. I felt unimportant sounds very different from you made me feel unimportant or you don't care. Sounds very different, and it's going to lead your conflict to a very different place and outcome. 2, we need to be honest. We need to be able to share our real feelings and needs, not hide that from someone that we care about. So don't pretend you're fine if you're not. I unfortunately love to sit in the car with my arms crossed, looking out the window with a deep So don't pretend you're fine if you're not. Silent treatment never works because you end up exploding later. A better example would be, You saying, honestly, I felt ignored and I need more reassurance when I share something important. Why that matters: hiding emotion builds resentment, whereas honesty builds trust. The third thing that we can do is practice relevance. And relevance is where we stay in the present conflict, so we're not kitchen sinking. We don't want to drag in old baggage unless it's directly related to the conversation and conflict at hand. You wouldn't want to say, this is just like last year when you embarrassed me in front of my parents. Better would be saying, let's stay focused on tonight. I want us to solve this issue because I care about you and I care about our relationship. It matters because staying relevant prevents you from becoming overwhelmed, and it keeps conflict solvable because it's focused in the present and not this bigger bubble where you bring things in from the past. The fourth element is to be clear in our communication. Be direct so your partner isn't left guessing what you're upset about. So a bad example here would be you say, you never make time for me anymore. A better example would be, I'd like for us to set aside one night a week just for us, date night. Why it matters? Clarity turns vague complaints into actionable solutions. Here's some key takeaways of conflict. Every fight leaves a mark on your relationship. It becomes a part of your history, part of your lived experience as a couple. If you usually solve fights well, that will build trust and make your relationship stronger. If your fights always end badly with harsh words and people's feelings being really hurt, it's going to create frustration and distance, and ultimately that's going to help your relationship go down that ladder towards dissolution or towards the end. Over time, all of this is part of your relationship story. So you start to see yourselves as either a couple that can work through things or a couple that always fights without fixing anything. How you handle conflict today shapes how your relationship feels tomorrow. You've probably heard the saying, don't go to bed angry. It comes from that quote. I'll say it again. How you handle conflict today shapes how your relationship feels tomorrow. If you go to bed angry and upset, with your feelings hurt, and somebody said something nasty to you that you care about, well, you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to carry that forward into that next day. And that's why conflict, when left unresolved, creates long-term lasting issues and damages a relationship. Now, we'll note here that our past experiences influence how we approach new conflicts in our current relationships. You see, we all have baggage, and baggage is just the stuff that we bring in from old relationships. But I always say this, just because someone treated you poorly in a prior relationship doesn't mean the person that you're with now is going to treat you the same way. Now, it may end up there, but not always. And so we need to give people the benefit of the doubt. And always remember, you are choosing to be in a relationship with this person because you care about them, because you have shared interest, because you find them attractive, because that value proposition, that balance of equity you feel is beneficial to your life. They're adding something. It's a benefit. It's an addition to your life. It shouldn't be something that takes away from your life. And so if you've built something with someone, give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove otherwise. Don't bring stuff from prior relationships into your current relationships today. It's hard to do, and it is something that you will become better at with age and with failed relationships. And that's just a fact of life, sadly. We often learn through our hurt and our pain. And when our relationships fail because our actions in part lead to that, we reflect on that, and hopefully we don't do it moving forward in new relationships. Every conflict and every resolution, as well as every failure at resolution, is going to become a part of your overall relationship history. It really does work, though, to help us reduce conflicts when we take direct ownership of our language, because when we use I language, it's less likely to make your partner feel like you're attacking them personally. It also makes it clear that you're owning your emotions instead of pushing them onto someone else. So instead of saying, you never listen to me, that's blaming language. That's going to trigger defensiveness automatically to whoever you say that to. You could say, I feel unheard when I share and the TV is on. I feel unheard. That's owning your feelings. That's inviting cooperation. You could say, you don't care about me. You just don't care about me anymore. You don't love me anymore. Well, that's an attack on someone's character, and that's going to shut down dialogue completely. Instead of saying that, you don't care. Say, I feel hurt when our plans change at the last minute. That's specific, focused, and constructive. Constructive meaning it's something that someone can work on and that they can improve. You see, anger, conflict is just a way of us telling someone else that we expect a change in their behavior. We expect them not to do something again because it upsets you. So that's why you have to be clear, open, and honest. And as long as it's valid, a valid concern, then people should respect that, and they will try, if they care about you and love you in a relationship, they will try not to hurt you in that same way moving forward again. That's why you got to be open and honest, and that's why you got to use I language so it takes the blame off of them and just says, hey, this may be super weird, and you may have never been with anybody like this before in the past, but I feel hurt when blank. Fill it in. It will change the course of conflict and dynamics in your relationship. You're going to build healthier conflict patterns. You're going to keep the conversations about behavior and not personal character attacks. And this helps preserve closeness, even in disagreements, and that will lead to a happier, healthier relationship. One thing that I like to do when I have conflict in my own personal relationship, I've been in my relationship for 17 years and been married for almost 10. I know when to walk away temporarily from a fight and say, listen, I really care about you, and I don't want to say anything that's going to hurt or damage our relationship. So just give me some space, and then I promise I'll come back and we can talk about this. Don't be afraid to ask for that space in those instances. And as long as you always come back and sit down and have a genuine conversation and listen to your partner, your relationship is going to be stronger because of that. So reappraisal is changing the way that we look at a situation. So when you have conflict, I want you to stop and I want you to recall the positives. So I want you, if you're having a heated moment, I want you to remind yourself of the things that you value in the relationship. Why are we together? What are the benefits of us in this relationship? Because remember, you're choosing to spend your time and energy and focus in that relationship because you care about this person. You love them. Remember that. So many times we treat people like we don't love them. We treat people like we don't care about them. We treat people like they're strangers on the street when they're not. We have time, energy invested into these relationships. So let's stop for a moment and let's act like it. Let's show people that we care about them, and let's show people that we care about them during our conflict. So you could say, I'm upset in your head. I'm upset, but this person has been there for me so many times in life through all of this shit that I've gone through in life. They've been there for me. They really do care about me. Stop and tell yourself that in your head. That shifts the focus from attacking to protecting the bond and the relationship that you have. They do care about you, even in that current conflict. So remember that. Don't say stuff that's going to hurt and damage that relationship. Think about the consequences. Remember, everything that you say and do becomes a part of your relationship story. So ask yourself, if I say this, how will it affect us in the short term? And how will it affect our relationship in the long term? If you yell, yeah, they'll shut up. Maybe. They'll probably also shut down. If you stay calm, you might actually work through that problem. So remember that. Recall the positives of the relationship. This is someone I love and someone I care about. And then think about the consequences. That will help you keep focused on growth instead of damage. And if you practice this, the benefits of reappraisal is that it's going to reduce the intensity of anger in the moment. It's going to help prevent escalation, saying things that you're later going to regret. And it's going to increase empathy. And empathy allows you to see conflict from your partner's perspective, not just your own. I want you to think about a relationship like a piggy bank. Every shared moment, whether it's a dinner out, a thoughtful message, a movie, or simply just spending time together sitting on the couch watching your favorite TV show. All of those things add value to your account. Experiences like meeting someone's family, supporting someone's important life goals, traveling together, all of those things make even larger deposits into the piggy bank of your relationship. But withdrawals happen too. A careless word, broken trust, or neglect, all of those things take away from the balance of your relationship. It's like removing money from the piggy bank. And when the account slips into the negative, well, stress builds. It can feel overwhelming, as though no matter what you do, it isn't enough. The deeper in debt your relationship goes, the harder it is to recover. And if too many withdrawals go unchecked, well, the piggy bank eventually shatters. And once it's broken, it's difficult, if not impossible, to repair. So you see, strong, lasting relationships are built through steady, intentional deposits. The more consistently you invest into your relationship, the more resilient the bond becomes, even when challenges arise.